because the fact that I was too much relying on my technical skills was also preventing me to sell. If you're on the job for a certain years, you need to upskill yourself, because the technologies that were very trendy 20 years ago when I started my career, but also 5 years ago, are not the technology of today anymore. So that's why I'm firstly not afraid, and secondly I'm always thinking, okay, I don't pretend to know everything, but I will discover, I will adapt.
Welcome to Road to Revenue Leadership, a show that candidly explores how hard it is to create, build, and scale world-class revenue organizations by leaders that have been there, done that, and have seen the results. My name is Dylan Mendes, founding CEO of USite, and I'm excited that you're tuning in to the podcast. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to subscribe and leave a review. Enjoy. All right, well, Lucie, maybe for the people that don't know Lucie and are very curious to know more about you, can you maybe just give a short introduction about yourself?
Yes, so I'm born and I grew up in France, and I did all my study in France, and during my study I made a year in Spain, which gave me a lot of, it was a very nice experience, very positive, so it gave me appetite to continue experience abroad. And I started my career in the Netherlands, and then I joined Belgium around 15 years ago. I have always been active in the IT industry, and I'm now, since almost 5 years, in charge of the sales department of Capgemini Belgium and Luxembourg.
All right, not bad, not bad. So you went to Spain, then to the Netherlands, and then you settled in Belgium. Is there a particular reason you settled down in Belgium, or
Yeah, because
just a
when I was
coincidence?
doing my role in the Netherlands, I had to come. So it was for a big international company, and I had to come once every week or 2 weeks for a day in Belgium. So I started to learn the professional culture of Belgium. And then when it was the moment, after around 3 years in the Netherlands, I was thinking to leave. But I thought that it was probably very difficult to go back to France, as I had no experience with the professional culture of France. So I thought that Belgium, and specifically Brussels, would be a good compromise between my Dutch culture on the professional side and my
Right,
French culture
French
on the
speaking.
private side.
Yeah. Definitely, no, 100%. So you are also fluent in Dutch.
Ik spreek Nederlands, ja.
Oh, all right, not bad. Well, makes sense if you have lived there and now you're still in Belgium. So definitely comes with a good plus. All right, Lucie, what I would love to do today is actually also deep dive a little bit more in your road to revenue leadership, because, and especially in your case, I know that you started within the computer science, IT
Yeah,
world, and then eventually you moved up to a sales career. And so I think
yeah.
it's going to be interesting to learn from your story how you went from a technical background to the sales, and then eventually to a revenue leadership role. But so yeah, take us wherever you want to start, but maybe you can start with that computer science background and maybe how that all started and where you then get from there to your first job.
Yeah, when I was studying, I was 16, 17. I was very curious about all scientific material and so on. And at that moment, yeah, computer system, IT in general, started to become more popular in studying. It was the beginning, yeah, because we were at the beginning of the 90s. So I had also two of my family members who were in IT studies, so they encouraged me to in my IDs, in my first IDs, and this is where I decided to make a master in IT. I really enjoy it, but it was also already very clear for me that I would not be on the technical side for all my career.
Yeah, why that?
Yeah, because I like to experiment it. I like to discuss about it. I was very curious about the trends and so on. So definitively, I was very interested to be in the ecosystem, but I was not so much not enough passionate to be in the architecture of application every day and so on, and maybe not competent enough also for that. So I preferred more the functional side than the pure technical side. And then I started my career. I had an opportunity to go in the Netherlands and to manage the IT department of an SMB, which was part of an international
group, right?
group. Yeah. So at that moment, I was, you had to create everything. So this is really what was very interesting, to work with different countries and to integrate the IT into the international ecosystem. And at that moment, I worked a lot with the sales of that company, because the customer of my department, part of them, it was the sales. So I spent time with them to understand what were their needs, which application they needed, and for that I had to understand their job.
All right. So unconsciously you entered kind of in a sales enablement revenue operations role as the head of IT of that SME.
Indeed. And after months of working with them, where they were explaining me what they were doing, making customer appointments, going to the customer, I went also sometimes with them, and so on. One day came the question, why not me?
Fair question. Did
And
you
as
do
I did,
any sales at Orion Group itself?
sorry?
Did you do any sales? Had you had any
No.
sales role at Orion Group, or did you then?
No, what
find
I
it somewhere else?
decided to do is after 3 years, there were less, how do you say, it was a bit less challenging, the role. So I wanted to move. I wanted to leave also Netherlands. So I made a big change. I moved to Belgium, to Brussels. And so I was changing of country, and I decided to change of role. And at the moment I decided, when I arrived in Brussels, I started the sales role.
All right. So yeah, then you did 3 years as business manager at Elt in Belgium.
Yeah.
Any experiences in any stories you have from there? Because it was your first actual sales experience. So I can imagine you had, you maybe made some rookie mistakes, you went over some growth phases. Anything you would like to share from that experience?
Yeah, it was, of course, it's a new job, and you need to learn fast, and to be very much focus on the competence at the beginning. I think my technical background helped me a lot, because I had customers. I'm a woman, and I'm looking younger generally than my age, and my customer were and are still mainly male, and they were very much experienced, so there was a big gap of difference of age. So I was not always, they were a bit challenging me. So the fact that I could really go in the technical aspect gave me some credibility. And then about some anecdotes, the fact that I was also speaking Dutch was a bit a question mark for them, because when I speak Dutch, I speak with a French accent, but they could hear that I was using really Dutch vocabulary from the Netherlands, and sometimes with some words where I had also a Dutch accent or a Dutch pronunciation.
Right.
So they were looking at me like, hey, what is this mix? Never seen before.
I can 100% imagine that. But interesting that you mentioned, I mean, it's not something I like to discuss because I don't like to pinpoint or to just say that, there is some type of expectations, wrong expectation, I will say, when people work with women, especially in the IT and sales world. But you really felt that people expected less of you because you were a young woman entering a technical field.
It's not the majority of the people, but yes, today you can still have, at least when I started my career, because now it's already some years ago. Yes, you could be challenged on the fact that you have made that choice, but also on your competencies. But world is evolving, and I remember that I was the first one a lot of times on a lot of roles. Now I see more and more women embracing STEM careers, and it's one of the topics which is very important for me, because today in the world of STEM you have a lot of possibilities, a lot of different careers, and it's a good way for people to. We know that in Belgium we have a lot of poverty still. We have people who wants to offer another type of life to their children, and we know that choosing a STEM career is one possibility to elevate your skills, but also your revenue, and concretely.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. No, I think it indeed started creating awareness, helping people visualize that a better future exists, and it's not because you've never encountered anyone in there that it's not possible. I mean, you can still
Indeed.
create the future that you want for yourself. But all right, but so interesting to still, hear from you and from your experience that you went through, those bad judgments from people, even though they probably didn't do it consciously, or at least I hope not. But still, what has then helped you to, because you mentioned really showing credibility by showing off your technical skills, if I can say it like that. Was that, were those the things that really helped you push through that?
It has helped me at the beginning, but it also became a trap at a certain moment. Because the fact that I was too much relying on my technical skills was also preventing me to sell. Because then you have also unconscious bias or conscious bias sometimes. This is not possible, the architecture should not be like that, and so on. So you need to find a balance between leveraging your technical skills, but also sometimes not, in fact, take the place of the architect or the pre-sales person and stay in your role of sales.
Yeah, I can imagine that's not always easy, especially if you know you could be actually doing those steps and you have to withhold of doing that. Right.
You've made a
Good one.
choice, so you need to stick on your choice, and you are not anymore on the technical side, you are now the sales. So you need to act like that. So of course, at a certain moment, I had to make a click and to make a definitive swap, I would say.
Yeah. No, but I think you see that often. I mean, I hear it from a lot of people that whenever they switch from position, but still in the same company, it's hard to really feel a 100% disconnection with their previous job because they have lived through it, they have the experience of it, they have the skills, and I can definitely also imagine that happens in your case as well. In your opinion, would you always recommend people to have really the technical background like you have before moving to a sales position in that technical world? Or do you think that's not really necessary? Or in the country, maybe it would be better to not have it. What's your thoughts on that?
I consider that if you don't have it, you will have any way to acquire it, to acquire a certain technical culture. Okay, I cannot say it's skills, but at least a culture. Because if you have no clue of what is happening, whereas we are in a full digital economy nowadays, and if it doesn't resonate to you, if it doesn't interest you, we have new trends every 6 months, a year, new tools, new things. If it's really something where you're not interested or even passionate, I have difficulties to understand how you will be able to stay in the role for long term. Because this is really our day-to-day life. This is our daily conversation with customers, but also internally with our technical staff. So if you don't have at all a culture, it's fine, but at least have a certain interest, and then you will learn on the job by reading books, by listening podcasts, by being connected with the technical people within the ecosystem.
Interesting. Are you then someone that, really takes everything that you can to become that cultural expert, if I can say it like that? I like the word culture. But yeah, you mentioned listening to podcasts, reading books, being there to really be passionate about it, but to also understand the best you can. Is that also
Of course, even if you are, and I would say even more if you're on the job for a certain years, you need to upskill yourself because the technologies that were very trendy 20 years ago when I started my career, but also 5 years ago, are not the technology of today anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to stay up to date. And for that, yeah, of course, I listen regularly podcasts. I also read books or yeah, different reports that are published. Some of them, by the way, are published by Capgemini, but can
Mm-hmm.
also be with the partners of our ecosystem. Um, and then, yeah, you have different material to stay up to date, but this is absolutely crucial in our job.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I sometimes feel that people think that is something that they do at the side of their actual job, that they do that after the working hours. What are your thoughts on that? Should you do that? Should that be a part of your job, and should then your manager or your company try to enforce that on you in some way? Or do you say, no, it's your own responsibility and you have a job and you can still do that on the side?
Well, with my people, I regularly encourage them to do so. And I do it consciously so that they don't lose that element in their priorities. Um, I don't limit myself to tell them, but I also propose them. I share with them. Listen, I've listened that podcast last week. I found it very interesting because I've learned the following elements. If you want to know
Mm-hmm.
more, please listen to it. I've read that report and it talks about this topic. I encourage you also to have a look at it. And then we had also discussion with the team on what is the best moment. And the best moment, there's no one answer. It also depends on your own organization, on your own personality, on your own situation. Because somebody who is single and somebody who has a family with 3 children and where the spouse is also has a lot of occupation also, you will not
Mm-hmm.
organize yourself the same. Some of them, I know that, for example, every Tuesday morning when they come to office, they put a podcast and in the car they listen to the podcast and it's their way to upskill. Some of them, it's more when they are in the bus in the morning, then they read one of the reports. Some of them, they are also in some technical clubs where they are learning, talking with our architect or pre-sales. So there's no one that fits all. The
Mm-hmm.
objective is that you find the way that will work for you and on long term.
100%. All right. Love those examples. Thanks for sharing that. Let's go back maybe to your road to revenue leadership. Because you did then a good 3 years as business manager at Alten Belgium, where you really had
Yeah.
that first sales experience. Then you moved to Sogeti as an
Mhm.
account executive for a
Yeah.
good 5 years, to then ultimately actually become the chief sales officer at Sogeti. Sogeti, that is now a department of Capgemini.
Indeed.
Did they found the department or did they acquire the department?
No, in fact, Sogeti has always been a company that were belonging to Capgemini Group. In the
Oh, okay,
past, it
okay,
was
okay.
two separate legal entities. So indeed, I entered 10 years ago, in fact, in Sogeti as a account manager and account executive. I grew up I was addressing a customer from the financial industry. And then 5 years ago, I was proposed to move on the role of sales manager of Sogeti Belgium. And 6 months after, the group has launched a big transformation program. And at that moment was created the role of head of sales for Capgemini and Sogeti, covering Belgium and Luxembourg. And they proposed me to take that role, and I said yes.
Interesting. So let's take us back to those days. So that was a transformation project, meaning that there were account executives and account managers, but there was not sales leadership from within the Belgium market, or how was the situation before you got that position?
Yeah, so there was one sales for what was called at that moment Capgemini Belgium and one sales for Sogeti Belgium.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And the one was one for Luxembourg, so it was not there was no one who was completely covering end to end the perimeter, and this is this role that they have created.
Okay, so very interesting. Let's get deeper into this one, because what were then the challenges for you when you entered that role? And because it's first of all your first sales leadership role, but at the same time you also go through that transformation. So I can imagine you had a lot on your plate. Can you maybe share a little bit about that experience?
In fact, I have to confess something, Dylan. In my career, I almost never report to a sales manager.
Okay.
I was mainly reporting to the chief executive officer directly. There were different circumstances why this happens. But that's a fact. So being a sales manager, I didn't know exactly what it was, what was expected.
Yeah,
Because I didn't
interesting.
had so many role models. So what has been probably sometimes a weaknesses, but also a lot of time a strength, is that I didn't have any model, so I could really create on the job what was necessary. And in that
Mm-hmm.
case, yeah, you need to be pragmatic. You need to understand what are the objective and translate it in the how. And then I would say I did it with my own style. And the team is not complaining, so I would say, and the results are there. So it seems that the journey I made is probably a good
Yeah,
one.
definitely. All right, so it's a completely Lucy invented framework at Sogeti Capgemini. Love it.
Yeah, as I told you, I'm very pragmatic. I like things which are agile, and I think it's more and more important. When I made that decision 5 years ago, it was um, probably a bit less natural, but in between we had the Corona time, and now the world becomes very unpredictable. So you need agility is more than ever a key topic.
Mm-hmm.
So here I'm talking about agility, about the concept, not the IT vocabulary.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
what I do is when we want to launch new initiative, we try it. If it works, fine, we adopt it. And if it doesn't work, then I have no issue to say, okay, that was a bad idea.
Yeah.
Let's try another one to
Well
reach our
tried, but
objective.
bye bye.
Voila.
100%. But it's very interesting that you say that you didn't really had any role model or any sales manager leader that you reported to before. Because was it then also maybe something that they challenged you on when you postulated for that job?
No, because in fact, the person who appointed me, it's our current CEO, and he just arrived and he proposed me a few weeks after to appoint me. So he didn't know all the story. I think he will discover it with the podcast, by the way.
Here we go.
um, but I don't. When I interview for a role, of course, you need to explain a bit about your background, but I don't pretend that I will know everything and I know already how I will do things.
Mm,
Because one situation is not another one. So, okay, you need a bit of experience, of course, but I think what is key is how you are going to adapt, what you're going to learn from the situation, from the team, from your customer, and so on, and what you're going to propose as model, which will be dedicated for that specific situation. And if you go in another company or if it's another moment and so on, it will be probably something different. So if you take my role of head of sales 5 years ago and now, it's not exactly the same. So that's
right.
why I didn't feel uncomfortable not to have so many role model. I think also what has helped me is the fact that I worked a lot. I worked and lived a lot abroad. You need to imagine that I was French. When I went to Netherlands, I knew absolutely zero words of Dutch.
Yeah, true.
Even the simple words like I love you, hello, thank you. Normally, you know these words, you know it in Spanish, you know it in
Yeah.
Italian, and so on. I had no clue at all. Um, so I had to learn. And I think the fact that I lived abroad helped me to really develop my sense of adapting, change management, and so on. So I think it's a very strong skill that I have. The fact that I'm also a woman has been strong because I'm in a world, or at least 20 years ago, I was in a world which was made for men. The IT was. I remember when I was at the
Definitely.
university in some class, I was the only lady, so I had to adapt also to that. Yeah, so that's why I'm firstly not afraid, and secondly, I'm always thinking, okay, I don't pretend to know everything, but I will discover, I will adapt. And this is what I have proven, and this is what I've said a bit on the job to say, look, probably I will not know everything because I don't have a long experience as sales manager and not so many role models. But regarding creating the new, don't forget that it was in the context of a big transformation, so they didn't want to copy the past. But I say, yeah, nobody has done it probably yet, based on what you expect. But creating the new, I think I'm very good at that.
Yeah, love that energy. Makes indeed. No, exactly. And like you shared. I mean, I think your story proves indeed that you're tough, that you're strong, that you're not scared of taking on a new challenge, and that gives enough credibility for the job, 100%. And I also like the transformation story. And I don't know again if you can maybe share a little bit more about that, because I would also like to understand more about what was then the new transformation. Because I understand that you didn't go from an as is to an optimization situation. You really went on and created the new, as you said, some entrepreneurship over there. But what was then the new approach that you have put in place?
Yeah, the objective was around collaboration, because I think customers are very much disappointed, but also frustrated when it comes to work with some companies, because then you have, the sales John who called them to sell product A, and then you have second sales in the afternoon, Sophia who called them from the same company to sell product B, and so on and so on. And this is very frustrating for customer. I think we all recognize these situations.
We can all agree. Yeah.
So the question on the table was how to organize ourselves to get more account centricity, and that we while avoid this type of situation, but in the meantime being able to offer our customer to benefit from our complete portfolio.
Interesting. Do you think that your IT computer science background has also kind of helped you during the transformation phase? Because I come myself from a degree in information management, where of course from a more business standpoint, we have to understand what are the different IT, infrastructures, processes, and how you can actually translate IT to business. And in some way, I can see that those elements that you might have acquired as well during your studies has maybe helped you recreate the commercial department back then. What do you also think sometimes like that, or was it just really
I
you
think
going at it
it has
and
helped
finding
me.
solutions?
Yeah, I think it has helped me more at the beginning of my career. When I was firstly because my sales competencies were weaker, so I was more relying on that at that moment. On top of that, today I'm also the sales manager, so I had to leverage more my soft skills and my technical skills in my current role.
Okay. All right. So if we continue in 2020, only 3 years ago, you got promoted to VP. Does
Yes.
that mean something, or is it just more of a promotion, but you still got the same responsibility, the same work to do, or does it entail a little bit more than just what you did before?
In Capgemini, when you reach a certain level of leadership, indeed you have some roles which are accessible for a vice president. Normally, when you are the head of sales, you need to have this vice president role. Now I would say I did it probably a bit the opposite, because I get the job first. I had to prove a lot, and then I was recognized as vice president. Of course, it's It's also responsibilities. It means that you are in the top leadership of the company, that you represent the company. So with that, you have to, of course, embrace and follow certain ethics, certain values, and also certain message, certain strategy that the company would like you to represent.
Right, right. You're part of the brand. You represent it. Does it also mean that you get incorporated into other discussions that are maybe more company wide, that then are not only discussion of the commercial department?
Yes, at two level, I would say. Firstly, I'm part of the management board of the company. So in that management board, you can find the responsible, the CEO, the chief operating officer, the CFO, the CHRO, so all the functions of the company. And we discuss in that board about the different problems that we can have in the company, but also the strategy on mid long term. I can tell you something which is not a secret anymore. One of the topics that make us very busy at the moment is about the move, because we are moving to a new building soon.
Oh, yeah, I've seen a post about that.
Voilà. So this is impacting all functions of the company at different levels. So what it is about, another topic that we are discussing is we want to open new geography or new services. We speak about that, how much of investment it is, what do we need to do for that? Did we make some pre-study? What are the results and so on? On the other hand, I'm part of different Capgemini, how do you say, initiative, where so I'm also a trainer in different Capgemini program where I share my experience as a leader for growing talents. But I'm also part of some groups. It depends. It can be to promote diversity, like Women at Capgemini, but it can also be a group where we are requested to give an idea or recommendation on a certain process or on a certain way of working and so on, to inspire at group level. So there are different ways to be to bring your own footprint.
Oh yeah, I can see that. You mentioned leadership coach. You kind of triggered my interest there, because what does that entail, and then how does that go?
So in Capgemini, we support actively the development of our talent, including sales talent. So you have different programs to help the sales to develop their skills. It can be technical skills, soft skills, but also sales skills. And one of the training where I'm one of the speakers is on how you address as a sales boardroom. Voilà, you don't address boardroom when you're in your sales life cycle with a customer the same way as you address an operational manager or the enterprise architect and so on. So we work on this topic, and I share my experience, and I share also my recommendation on how I do it to inspire these growing talents.
Love it. So I have to ask, because I'm pretty sure that you have shared your experience multiple times already, and so there must be some elements that people find very useful every time you explain it. So maybe are there some elements, some tips you can share with us in the podcast?
Yeah, it's a long training of several days. So how to make it short? Firstly, we all know that it's a lot about relationship, but relationship is not limited to having a drink somewhere with sympathetic people. Of course, it is, or it can be part of the exercise, but it's also about your being authentic. What I repeat to my people is how you are going to create the trust, because a customer will not only buy your products for what it is. When a customer is signing a contract with you, at least in our industry, it's for several years. So he wants to have somebody with who he will have yeah, where he will like to see you every week or every day if needed. So he must appreciate you as a human. And he must also
Right.
trust you, because it can be that you have at a certain moment a crisis at customer side or on our side. And for that, you need to have trust. It's one of our value in Capgemini. It's also something I really strongly believe in. And I think how to create trust, I think the first thing to create trust is to be authentic. You cannot be perfect. You also have your own limitation. You also do your own mistake. But if you recognize it, and that you are authentic, you don't try to be who you, the person you are not, then I'm convinced it will create trust. And I've seen several times customers giving us a chance, or awarding us, to be more precise, because they had that good, good connection at the end.
No, that's 100% correct what you say there. I mean, I hear it over and over and over again. You have to be authentic if you indeed want to build a deep, lasting relationship. Also, what is your take on also to just give it time when you want to build relationship? Because I also feel that we as sales, we need to, to get to the target, to our quota. So we want, deals happening faster than maybe they should. And maybe we are not being patient enough and destroying relationships because of that. Is that also maybe an element that you touch on during the training?
Yeah, so what we do with the team, we have two tracks in parallel. We have the short term, because sometimes we need a short term acceleration on the business. But in parallel, I make sure that we have, I would say, a midterm plan, 2 to 3 years, where we have discussion on which logos do we want to have in our customer database. And for that, to acquire them within the 2-3 coming years, what we are going to do. And I give you an example of a contract we have signed with a customer in January. We were shaping that deal and creating a relationship with that customer since almost 3 years. So there's no, according to me, you need to do a bit both in parallel, because you cannot only say we have a revenue issue and I cannot do anything because I'm executing my plan that I've decided 2 years ago.
Right.
And again, because we are in a world which is very turbulent and which is changing every, even making prediction now 9 months ago becomes more and more challenging. So you need that. But in parallel, if you don't know where you go, if you don't have your objective in mind for the 2-3 coming years, or yeah, it can be even more, but 2-3 years I think is a good view with the level of my team. If you don't have the objective in mind, then you don't know where you go. And this is where you can fail, lose the momentum. And this is where you can also see but that you lose customers, that you lose revenue, that you are under pressure on the growth, and so on.
That's a very good remark. I think that is a good example of what sales wisdom is. It's about knowing when to do what. And it's not that giving it a lot of time or not giving time at all is a good thing. It's just to know when to do what. And very, very good remark. Maybe something linked to your industry. Because I've noticed that a lot of consulting businesses, sometimes it's the partners that take the sales in hands. And you have a couple of them, and I believe you guys are one of them then. Really have a dedicated commercial department for that. And I mean, is that, I'm curious on your thoughts about that, and why do you then decide to have a commercial department?
Yeah, the world has completely changed over the last 5 years. But if you look at how we were selling in our industry 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and now it's completely different. So what is important today is to understand that you don't evolve alone. It's not Capgemini alone, and it's not yourself, Dylan or Lucie, alone. We are part of an ecosystem. And the ecosystem is, of course, consisting of all the Capgemini entities, but also all our partners, which can be software editors, but also we are using partners for other type of expertise. And I always repeat to the sale that we are the orchestrator. So we orchestrate internally to leverage pre-sales, architect, finance, our expertise, and so on, but also externally what is the right partner, what is the right customer testimonial that we can bring, or the right customer connection.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is really the key today in our industry.
I love that. Definitely. The ultimate orchestrator.
You know, in the past, the sales were seen had the image of being the lonely cowboy who was entering,
Yeah, the lone wolves and stuff like
voilà,
that.
going into the bank with his gun and stealing the money, and he was rich and so on. We all know that story and that image, but I think it has never been as. Today, it's really the opposite. It's if you're not able to embrace your ecosystem, and if you're not able to inspire people to go with you, then you will not make any sales.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel that there still exists some kind of wrong perception about the sales, the field of sales? That people still think that, it's still a world of lone wolves and they just go there and manipulate you to get you money and don't actually understand really the orchestrating role as you define it so well. Do you think that still a lot of people, especially not coming from a business background, still see it like that? And
It
how do you
has
respond to that?
evolved. It has evolved now. I think we still have
Mm-hmm.
room for improvement to sell ourselves and sell our jobs also.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe, Lucie, I'm also kind of interested to learn more about you on a more maybe personal level.
Mhm.
Um, because I also, especially if you say that you went to Spain for a year, then to the Netherlands, then to Belgium, uh, I would like to understand, what was Lucie then younger, and in what kind of environment did you grow up? What were the conversation like at the dinner table when you were a kid? What? Can you maybe explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I grew up on the countryside. Remember, at that moment there was no internet, so the window on the
Right.
world was via TV and radio and a bit of newspaper exclusively. But
Mm-hmm.
my father was traveling a lot. He was a military, and I was absolutely, yeah, amazed to listen to him all about his journeys, his trips. He was going a lot in Africa, so he was talking to me about the deserts, about the camels, about all this beautiful landscape, about also the population that he was meeting. That were sometimes in difficulty to get access to food and so on. So on that, I remember that compared to the other children at school, that I was more open on this type of topics. Then I think the chance I had is as there was no internet, I dreamed a lot. I dreamed a lot about the future. I dreamed a lot about what I wanted to do, what I wanted to achieve. And this is important because today it's still important in the decision I take. What I dreamed about, which adult I wanted to be, and so on. It's a good guide today
Mm-hmm.
on the action I do, on the decision I take to reconnect with my roots, with my real DNA, and to the person I wanted to be. This is why I think you don't lose yourself. Where in this world where you're over solicited, where everybody explain you what you should do, who you should be.
Right.
It's a very good guide. Yeah.
Interesting. And so, what was then your ambition back then? Because I think that you had indeed a very open-minded view of the world, and you knew that there was much more to do than only live at the countryside somewhere in France. But so, what was then the ambition back then? Well, what did you want to make out of yourself, or what did you want to achieve?
I didn't know concretely which job I wanted to do. I knew that I would make long studies, probably a master, also because I get a lot of remarks when I was young from teachers, from my family that I was clever. So then I could also hear the expectation of making long studies based on that. Me, I
Mm-hmm.
was dreaming to go and live to Spain, which then you know already there's no secret anymore, not teasing possible anymore. You know already that I have made that dream. That was probably one of the best period of my life. Just when you have dreamed so much and you realize it, it's absolutely fantastic, and I encourage everybody to realize your dream. Then I knew that I wanted to discover the world, so that I would not stay on the countryside where I grew up. That was very clear. My father inspired me so much and made me so much curious that it was very clear I could not stay only on what I was seeing. Nowadays, maybe it would have been different because with internet, everything almost is accessible wherever you want. But at the moment, the only possibility to see it with your own eyes was to travel. And then when I was 15, it's only at that moment that it became more clear that I would probably go for a technology career. I didn't know if it was yet IT and so on, but that became quite clear. I was very much interested in the newspapers that I was reading. I was more focusing on on the tech articles. So at that moment, this interest grew up day by day.
Started to grow and started to take over your life, of your career. Interesting. When you look back at moving from one country to another, or from one job to the other, from a position to the other, were there sometimes beliefs that you had that maybe could be categorized as false beliefs that you then, got unlearned because of the future experience that you had? And if so, can you maybe share a little bit on those?
When I moved to the Netherlands, it was very confronting. Yeah, because you grew up with a certain education, and when you say education, people are only referring to the education of your family, your parents. But in fact, you also grow in a country, and this country, via the media, also give you a certain education. At school, you receive a certain education. So everything that looked very natural in France, I realized that it was not so natural, or that it was sometimes the opposite for people that grew up in the Netherlands. But again, so I really had to adapt myself. I was very proud of me after 3 months when I was in the Netherlands, and that I had a bank account, and I had a car and an apartment, and I had electricity, and I could go to the job. It looks simple things, but we forget that when you are not in an environment that you are used to, these simple things are becoming very challenging. I was going to the supermarket. I was not speaking Dutch at the beginning. I had no clue of the price because, how do you say carrots and what is the price of the carrots? You cannot read it. You have so many etiquettes and you don't know which one is a good one.
And
but
Google
again,
Translate wasn't there back then.
Yeah, but you cannot take a dictionary and look for each and every word.
No, exactly.
On top of that,
you would live in the grocery store.
Indeed. And on top of that, in the Netherlands, for example, the banking system was much more mature than in France. So I was confronted with the language a handicap, but also with the difference of maturity in the technology. So I was completely lost. What I said to my mom after is that a lot of people probably would have escaped from the situation and been back in their comfort zone. I learned to deal being in an uncomfort zone, embracing the change, because fighting against the change, it will not work. And also about the importance of the connection, which helped me later on in the sales role, because you will not achieve everything by yourself. It was very clear that I would not become a Dutch speaker in a week. So what can you bring to others so that they help you, and what do you expect from them to help you, how you can build win-win situation. But so I learned a lot on soft skills that helped me later on in my sales career, in fact.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting. Thanks for sharing. Because I can also, I try to imagine myself. I had a similar experience, but not quite the same, because nowadays a lot of countries also kind of manage the English language. But if I look back at my experience, I can say that making the step, for example, moving to the Netherlands without knowing the language, is easy. Just saying, yes, I'm going to do it because you are enthusiastic about the idea, you visualize it, but don't think of actually the challenges and the problems you might face. Then you are there and you encounter problem after problem after problem. And during that moment, you might think, what the heck am I doing? Almost panicking, almost freaking out, thinking to yourself, yeah, should I go back? Should I stay? What should I do? But then actually, it's just, a little time passed by. And I think that you quickly get over that. Had you also had that phase of, actually, now we are 3 months further and it's not that bad? And that sometimes maybe situations that we find ourselves in the beginning, you find it very frightening. But actually, if we give it a little bit time, it's all good. Was that also kind of what you experienced, perhaps?
Indeed, and I think this is true when you take a new role, when you change of career, when you go to a new company. We are in a world that wants everything right now, but we need to give a bit ourselves of patience. We also need to give ourselves recognition for what we have accomplished.
Right.
We need to have a certain self-confidence also, trust our own skills. And it's also what I told you a bit earlier. You need to know what are your values and why you do things. If you do things with a certain objective in mind, and me, I knew, I remember me being a little girl and dreaming, looking outside via the window and dreaming about discovering new culture, new countries. Then at a certain moment when you are lost or when you get a very high pressure because things are not going exactly as you want, you reconnect to that and you know why you do it. And this will guide you to get the energy in the difficult moments.
I love that. I love that thinking. Thanks for sharing that, Lucie. Lucie, I think we're arriving to the end of our discussion, unfortunately. But so suppose that people want to know more about you, want to have a chat with you, might be interested in working with you, along you. Where would you like to send them to? How can I reach you?
I think the easiest way is to contact me via LinkedIn. And then
Makes sense.
Voilà, and then I participate regularly in different events. And for example, I come regularly to the drinks and events you organize at We Are Sales. So
Yes.
I also encourage people to join us, and then you will be able to connect physically with me and with you.
Love that. Good call to action. All right, Lucie, I have one last question for you, a question I ask all my guests. And the question goes as follows. If Lucie would be a brand, what would it stand for?
It's a very good question. I don't know if it's a brand, but my motto is that there's no limit. We are generally our own limit. For me, there are only 3 limits, which is to respect the law, to respect our ethics. But for the rest, be bold, dare to do, dare to initiate, and just dare to be.
Love that. You're your own limits. Be bold. Dare to be. Love that energy. Lucie, again, thank you so much. And I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you very much, Dylan.
That's it. We have once again reached the end of an episode. I just really appreciate you all spending the time. If you like what you heard, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Until next week with a fresh new episode.